Now that we have all the building blocks for our URL, it's time for us to build that URL. You will see that when we build this method, we're going to be referring to two things. We'll be referring to a URI and a URL. And this can get a little bit confusing. So let's just take a little look-see what the difference between a URI and a URL is. I will link this website in to learn. But basically the difference is that a URI is an identifier and a URL is a locator. So the URI tells us what we need to find and the URL tells us how do we access it on the internet. In the example that we are using, we're going to use HTTP. We might even have to revert to HTTPS to access the weather data. So the weather data that we want is the URI. We have an identifier for that. And the URL is the full protocol. How do we get there? The URI to what it is, and how do we get the response? And we're going to be building that now. So the first thing that we want to do is build a method, and this method needs to return URL. You guys must just take a look when you import stuff. You must just use java.net. There is more than one URL and URI thing that can come up depending on what you have imported when you installed your Android, and you can choose the wrong one, and it will be a bit painful. So we have a method that one of type URL. Just one thing. Let me just take that out there. We actually want to build a public static because remember, Highlander, there can be only one. We cannot have multiple copies of URIs coming around. So we have a public static URL. Okay, and it's using java.net method and Alt and Enter to import that guy. Right, and you will see the import appears for you there. We have a public static URL that's called build URL for weather. It accepts no parameters and it's going to give us a red quickly as we are not giving it a return value. We are building up to that return value. So the first thing is we're going to build a URI to indicate that we would like to connect to AccuWeather to get the 5-day forecast in metric using this API key. We will then convert that URI to a URL because you will see that it appends characters like question marks and things like that into that URL for you, which is why we can't just concatenate a string or anything like that. So we need to bring in a URI. Okay, two things here. You have to use the URI with a small I from Android.net. Big I URI is not going to work. So we have a URI and we're going to call it URI. You might get this red asking for an import. I see mine is imported, but if it's red, just Alt and Enter to import it. And this URI is, we're going to use that full URI class to use URI.path. So let's start building this guy. What do we need? We need the base URL to say, please connect to the data service at AccuWeather.com, go to forecasts and get us the daily 5-day forecast for Durban. But we want to append upon this or build upon this, but build upon, add to this thing the following. Add to it a query parameter. And this query parameter needs to have in it, the first thing that we're going to send is we're going to go and we're going to send the API parameter to say the API key is the API key. So connect AccuWeather, give us a 5-day weather forecast with this API key. See, we would like this in metric. And we would like to build this URI. Now we have a URI to say what we want. We want a 5-day weather forecast from AccuWeather using my API key, and we would like the data in metric. It's not yet a URL because we don't know what protocol. Missing here is the protocol, and missing here is a whole lot of little special characters, which we will use the URL class to build for us. So now we need a URL called URL, and we have to set this to null here or the return value will give us a problem. And we can now start building that URL. Okay, so the URL is a new URL, and it will need from it our URI.toString. Now, we will get a little light bulb here, the red one, that tells us that we need to handle an exception here. So we can say around surround with try catch, and then Android will not let you continue without this. So we have to say surround with try catch. And then basically what will happen is, I just want to do the brackets the way my OCD can cope. So what will happen is it will try to build our URL, but it will catch a malformation exception for us. If the URL doesn't look the way it should, it will print it to the stack trace so that we can see where things went wrong. At this stage, we want to go create a tag. Okay, we want a log. So there is log I, log D, log E, log F, log R. And I think it was Kyle in one class who figured out for us log I actually means information. So what we want to do is we want to go and log. We want to print out this URL in logcat so that we can read it. And we need to give it a tag. So if we say, sorry for I on Africa on it. If we say Alt and enter here, it should allow us to build. Let's see if it will do it. And it never does it for me, which is so freaking irritating. But you should be able to, let's try Alt and insert. No, you should be able to tell it to just create that variable. With Alt and Enter, it's supposed to go and create that variable for us, but it just won't. So let's go and make the variable. And usually good practice is to do this right at the top. So we're going to do public flat text final string. A. And my computer will not do it because I'm outside of the class definition. Everything is going very, very well here. I know exactly what I'm doing. So we are going to go public static final string tag. And we're going to say our URL. So we can actually run this tag in logcat to find the URL. So our tag should no longer be a problem. So we can say build URL for weather plus URL. So please show me the actual URL and you will see how this log works. And for some of you, the log actually might not work, which is a buggy thing, which I'm trying to figure out. So Android Studio is all angry as all hell still, because no IDE gets as angry as Android Studio, and it is because it wants return URL. Right, so there is our first method where we go and we take our building blocks here to go and create a method that first builds a URI and then converts that URI to a URL for us. Because you'll see there's no HTTP here. There's no question marks that we need. Oh, there's HTTP, but you'll understand later. There's no question mark that we need, and so forth. Right. The next method that we need is the HTML connection. I'm just going to zoom out a little bit here so that you guys can see the full method. I'm going to make this, and I'm going to collapse that, and then maybe zoom in a bit more. So that is what the full method looks like, so that you can actually go and build it and possibly pause here, which actually makes me feel sick. But while you guys are at home and really battling, I'm not going to dump you in the deep end. I'm going to help you as far as I can. So this is what the full method looks like. We take our URI, we build our URI with our building blocks, and we convert that to a URL, and we just surround that with a try catch statement. We log it, and we return that URL. In the next video, we will be creating the HTTP connection, and I will then show you how we're going to start seeing what our stuff looks like. So let's end this one.